They thought I'd crumble, that I'd sign away my life with a polite nod and maybe some tears. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Hi, I'm Danny. I'm 41. And up until exactly 3 months ago, I thought I had a decent marriage. Not perfect, but stable, predictable, comfortable in that slow Sunday morning kind of way. I've been with Nate 42 suits every day, smooth talker, high-functioning narcissist for 18 years. We've got 2 teens, Mia and Jay, both in high school. I work part-time doing books for a local design firm in Silver Spring, Maryland. Quiet job, nothing flashy. I liked it that way. Nate's a contract lawyer, the kind who smiles too much at clients and not enough at home. He's always been polished, calm, calculated, the kind of man you trust because you want to. I used to. I really did. Let me take you back. It was a regular Wednesday. I only remember because I always make honey time chicken on Wednesdays. And Mia was downstairs whining that I forgot the dinner rolls again. Jay had his earbuds in, pretending not to hear her. The usual. Nate was already home. Weird. He's never home before 6. But there he was, swirling red wine like he was in some kind of Napa Valley commercial. And of course his mother was there, Eleanor, queen of condescension. She'd been visiting for over a week, helping, she claimed, more like lurking, critiquing, breathing down my neck and pretending not to. I was mid-mashed potatoes when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on my apron, already exhausted, and opened the door. Standing there was a man in his 40s. Nice suit, crisp haircut, leather briefcase. Too calm. Good evening. I'm looking for Danielle Moore. That's me, I said, confused. I'm Paul Mercer, Mercer and Klein Legal. I have some documents that require your immediate attention. He didn't even blink, just opened the briefcase like this was a sales pitch. Nate appeared behind me with his wine, looking smug. Too smug. I already hated the vibe. What's going on? I asked. Come sit, Nate said, motioning to the dining room. Might as well handle this properly. I followed, still clueless. Paul laid a thick envelope on the table like it was a casual menu. I opened it. Froze. Divorce papers. I blinked. I didn't. File for divorce. You didn't, Nate replied, sipping his wine. We did. It's time. His voice was so calm, like he was talking about switching cable providers. My hands started shaking. I looked up. Eleanor gave me a soft smile that made my skin crawl. It's best if you don't resist this, dear. It'll be smoother for everyone. Resist? This wasn't some custody debate. This was an ambush. I flipped through the papers. It wasn't just a petition. It was a plan. Custody suggestions, asset division, even a section on my mental instability. He cited the panic attack I had last month. One panic attack. At the grocery store. I told him about it thinking maybe he'd finally ask, "Are you okay?" Instead, he wrote it down like a lawyer prepping for battle. You've been off, Nate said. The kids are older. You've been distant. I laughed. Distant? I've been making everything work while you play corporate superhero, and your mother critiques my towels. He didn't even flinch. There's someone else, he said. Just like that. No warning, no apology, no shame. I couldn't feel my hands. And she's pregnant, I asked. He didn't answer, just sipped his wine again. Eleanor reached across the table and patted my hand like I was a confused child. You'll find your own path, Danielle. You've had your time. My time? I raised our kids, kept the home running, managed the chaos while he traveled for deals. I was the damn anchor. But sure, my time's up. The papers were dated 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks of pretending. 2 weeks of how was your day. 2 weeks of letting me plan our anniversary dinner. They had plotted this, together. But here's the thing, they underestimated me. I smiled, slowly. The kind of smile that makes people nervous. Because I remembered something they didn't. I excused myself, calm as ever, walked upstairs to our closet, pushed aside an old duffel bag, and reached for the small safe Nate hadn't touched in years. Inside was a black folder, labeled just in case. 6 years ago, Nate left a spreadsheet open on his laptop. Offshore accounts. Sketchy as hell. When I asked, he claimed it was a client thing. But I knew. I just knew. So I printed, copied, logged, quietly, no confrontation, just insurance. And now, I walked back into the dining room, calm, cool, folder in hand, dropped it right in front of him. Nate's face went pale. Eleanor narrowed her eyes. What's that? Just something I forgot I had, I said sweetly. Paul, the lawyer, looked confused. I wouldn't rush those signatures, I told him. Unless you're comfortable facilitating tax fraud. Paul blinked. Inside the folder were records of money transfers, shell companies, and undeclared income at least 3 accounts in the Caymans. Paul quietly closed his briefcase. I'll follow up next week. And just like that, he vanished. Now it was the 3 of us. You told me this was clean, Eleanor hissed. She's bluffing, Nate said. I wasn't. Oh, I really wasn't. Nate didn't say a word after Paul left. He just sat there, staring at the folder like it might grow teeth. Eleanor, meanwhile, shifted in her seat, eyes narrowed, calculating. She was the kind of woman who hated not being the smartest person in the room, and right then she looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a speech. No dramatic scene, no shouting. I simply picked up the divorce papers they'd so eagerly handed me, flipped to the last page, and slid them back across the table. You'll want to fix those numbers, I said. Unless, of course, you want the IRS to see all of them, too. Nate tried to laugh, but it came out thin. Eleanor reached for her wine like it could save her dignity. I stood up, picked up the now cold chicken from the table, and walked it to the kitchen. My hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. It was adrenaline. I felt something I hadn't in years' clarity. I'd been tired for so long, tired of second-guessing myself, of being polite, of bending just to keep peace in a house that stopped feeling like home a long time ago. That night, after the kids went to bed and Eleanor finally retreated to the guest room, I sat in the dark living room and stared at the fireplace. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry. I was focused because now I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, I went back to that same safe. Beneath the folder I'd shown them was another one. This one had documents Nate definitely never knew I had printouts of emails he thought he deleted, screenshots of late-night messages to women who weren't me, invoices he tried to bury, and most importantly, notes. Not mine, my therapist's. I started therapy a year ago, not because I was unstable like he claimed in those papers, but because I was starting to feel like I didn't exist. My sessions weren't just venting, they were evidence. I had described everything: his distance, the gaslighting, the way he made me feel like I was asking for too much when all I wanted was kindness. My therapist had documented it all. I asked her to. I said I needed a paper trail, just in case. She agreed. Turns out, women like me always have to protect ourselves from people like him. I called her that morning, told her what happened. She didn't sound surprised. She told me she'd have the notarized copies ready by Friday. That gave me a window. 2 days. 2 days to prepare. And Nate, being Nate, didn't suspect a thing. He'd gone back to acting like nothing happened. Still drinking his overpriced wine. Still sleeping in the guest bedroom like we were just in a little tiff. Still pretending. That Friday, I got a letter from Mia and Jay's school. It stopped me cold. Apparently, someone had submitted transfer paperwork for both kids. Not just to a new school, but a private academy halfway across the state. I hadn't agreed to anything. I hadn't even heard of the school. The letter said the transfer was in process, that they were waiting on final paperwork. My stomach dropped. Nate. It had to be. He was trying to take them from me, quietly, legally. He thought if he filed first, rewrote the story, and painted me as unstable, he'd win. Custody. Control. Everything. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I printed the letter and got in my car. I drove straight to the school, sat in the principal's office with every document I could find: custody laws, current school records, even my therapist's letter stating I was in good mental health. The principal was shocked, said they'd never seen a transfer attempt without both parents' consent. They paused the process immediately. That night, I waited until dinner. We were all at the table. Mia scrolling through her phone, Jay half listening to music. Nate walking in like he was still king of the castle. You tried to move our kids behind my back, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. He froze mid-step. It's not what you think, he started. I was doing what's best for them. Mia looked up. You were moving us? Jay pulled out one earbud. Without telling Mom? Nate sat down, tried to smile. I just wanted better opportunities. No, I cut in. You wanted control. You wanted them away from me before court even started. For once, he had no response. Mia looked at me, then at him, and she stood up, walked around the table and sat beside me. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Jay followed. That silence said more than any speech ever could. Nate's face cracked. He wasn't used to losing, especially not like that. But it wasn't over, because the next day I got a message, not from Nate, from her, the woman. Her name was Kara. She was 36. Worked in software development. I didn't know he was still married, she wrote. I thought he was divorced. He told me you two had separated years ago. I called her. I don't know why I expected her to be cold. She wasn't. She was angry, hurt, pregnant. Yes, she confirmed it. She was expecting. And she thought she was building a life with a man who had lied to her about everything. I met her for coffee. We sat across from each other, comparing stories like war veterans. The timelines matched up. The lies overlapped. The betrayal was mutual. She showed me texts, photos, receipts. Turns out, Nate had been charging dinners with her to our joint card, using hotel rewards I'd earned. Even promised her our lake house, the one I'd decorated myself. Down to the hand-sewn curtains in the guest room. She told me she was keeping the baby, but wanted nothing to do with him. Not after what she found out. I respected her for that. She wasn't the enemy, Nate was. And he wasn't done sinking. Kara wasn't the only one. There were others. I started going through our bank records, his client list, old emails, found patterns, found red flags I'd ignored, messages that went beyond friendly, favor exchanges, legal help for private favors. I dug deeper. Called one of the women he used to work with. She told me she left the firm because of Nate, said he was manipulative, that she'd seen him pressure a client into silence after making a move on her. He thought he was too smart to get caught, but he was arrogant and sloppy. And I had everything I needed. 3 days later, I met with my real lawyer. Not the kind who shows up with a briefcase at dinner, the kind who listens, who builds cases that hold up in court, who told me exactly how deep Nate's mess was and how I could use it. You're holding a house of cards, she said. All we have to do is blow. I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I was finally ready. After meeting with my lawyer, something inside me shifted. Not just relief, but purpose. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was building, quietly, steadily, in the background, while Nate went on pretending the house wasn't on fire. He was still trying to keep up the illusion of control, probably convincing himself this would blow over, that I'd calm down, come to my senses, maybe even negotiate. What he didn't know was that I'd already stopped playing his game. I was rewriting the rules. The first thing I did was change every password tied to my name bank accounts, utilities, insurance, the kids' school portals. Then I opened a new checking account in just my name. I started funneling what little income I had into it. It wasn't much, but it was clean. It was mine. I also created backups of everything, every document, every email, stored copies on encrypted drives, and sent one to my sister out west, the one Nate never liked. She called me after reading the files and said only one thing: he picked the wrong person to underestimate. I knew she was right, but I also knew he wasn't going to go down quietly. That weekend, Eleanor left, not with a goodbye, not even a note, just vanished. Took a flight back to Florida without saying a word, which honestly was the most peace she'd ever given me. Her absence felt like the house could breathe again, for a moment, because 2 days later I came home from work and found Nate in the living room with flowers. He had cooked dinner, played soft jazz from his old playlist, the same one we used to listen to when we were still pretending to like each other. He smiled, told me he wanted to talk. I didn't sit. I stood in the doorway and asked, "Are we doing this because you're scared or because you think I'm stupid enough to fall for it?" His face faltered for just a second before the performance resumed. "I just think we rushed things. Maybe we could work through it. For the kids," I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so far removed from reality, I couldn't even fake a response. "You tried to take them from me behind my back. You don't get to pull the family card now." He kept trying. Said things like how he missed me, how it was all a mistake, how we both got overwhelmed. The whole thing felt rehearsed, like he'd Googled how to get your wife to forget you're a trash human. But I wasn't looking for apologies. I was collecting patterns. Because if he was going to act like everything was fine, that gave me more time to move in silence. I accepted the flowers, let him serve me dinner, said thank you, even offered a smile, because I needed him calm. I needed him to feel safe. That same night while he was in the shower, I opened his briefcase, just to check. Inside, I found something new. It wasn't signed, but it was ready. Terms written in legal jargon, designed to make it sound fair, but it wasn't. If I signed that, I'd be walking away with pennies and silence. And buried at the bottom of the briefcase? A thumb drive. I plugged it into my laptop after he went to bed. Password protected. But Nate was never creative. His passwords were always tied to his old college football number. 3 guesses, and I was in. What I found made my hands go cold. Emails between him and someone named Derek, his financial consultant. They were discussing the liquidation of certain assets, selling off stock, preparing to move funds out of the country. He was trying to move money, fast, before the divorce became official, before I could freeze anything. But now I had proof. My lawyer was going to love this. The next morning I sent her the files. She called me an hour later. "This changes everything," she said. "We're filing now. Full throttle." That week was a blur of signatures, filings, and strategy calls. I barely slept, but I felt more alive than I had in years. And while I moved with legal precision, Nate kept playing pretend. He even suggested a weekend away, just us. Said it might help us reconnect. I nodded, told him I'd think about it, and then I served him, right in front of his office building. My lawyer had a process server deliver the divorce suit, complete with financial fraud allegations, custody claims, and a full appendix of his offshore dealings. According to one of my old coworkers, who happened to be nearby, he turned pale, mumbled something about misunderstandings, and stumbled back inside like someone had just pulled the floor out from under him. That evening, he came home quiet. No jazz, no wine, no flowers, just silence. I was in the kitchen when he walked in. He didn't say anything, just stood there, like he expected me to look sorry. I didn't. "You served me at work?" he finally asked. "You lied to me in our home," I answered. "So yes, I did." He stared for a long time, then said something that told me exactly how far gone he was. "You're ruining your own reputation," I smiled. "No, I'm saving my kids from thinking this is what love looks like." That shut him up. The next morning, he left early, didn't come back that night. I didn't care. I had other things to do, like meet with a forensic accountant. My lawyer brought her in after reviewing the thumb drive. She was brilliant, scary smart, told me she'd already tracked over $500,000 in suspicious transfers. "If we dig another week," she said, "I bet we find twice that." And we did. Offshore holdings, fake vendors, loans to non-existent startups. Nate had been funneling money for years. He thought I wasn't paying attention. That because I was only working part-time, I'd never notice. But I did. And now I had a team that noticed too. The kids started asking questions. Not big ones, just enough to show they were watching. Mia wanted to know why Dad hadn't come to her debate finals. Jay asked if he was still moving them to another school. I answered carefully, never bad-mouthing, just the truth. Sometimes people make choices that show us who they really are. They got it. They really did. One night, Mia left her laptop open on the couch. A Word doc was open. It was a personal essay for English class. The title, What Strength Looks Like. I read it, quietly. She'd written about me, about how sometimes strength doesn't look loud. Sometimes it looks like a mom who doesn't break even when everything is falling apart. I cried, not out of pain, out of pride. Because no matter what Nate tried to take from me, he couldn't rewrite the truth. He couldn't erase what they saw with their own eyes. And this was just the beginning. By the time the forensic audit wrapped, we had enough evidence to bury Nate in court, and probably on a few federal tax lists too. My lawyer and I sat in her office on a rainy Thursday, going over every document one more time. She was calm, surgical, and low-key, terrifying in the best way. "We could go after everything," she said, sliding a folder toward me. "Not just the house, not just full custody, all of it. The accounts, the stocks, the retirement assets he thought were off limits." I nodded slowly. I wasn't in a rush. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about removal. Removal of control. Removal of power. Removal of the man who once looked at me like I was a temporary solution to a problem he hadn't named yet. I left her office with my head clear and a folder full of Nate's secrets. That same day, I filed a formal complaint with the Maryland Bar Association. I gave them everything proof of unreported finances, his emails with Kara, financial manipulation of clients, even testimonies from 2 former coworkers who were tired of covering for him. Then I filed a police report. Not to be dramatic, but to protect myself. I wasn't going to end up tangled in his fraud mess. Let the authorities deal with his mess. I was cleaning up my own life, quietly, cleanly. And then, just when I thought the cracks couldn't spread further, they did. Kara called me again. She'd just had a meeting with her legal team. Apparently, Nate hadn't just lied to her about being married. He had also promised her a stake in one of his clients' investments, which, legally, he couldn't do. She was angry. But more than that, she was organized. She told me she planned to sue him for fraud, for emotional distress, for everything she could. He manipulated me, Donnie, just like he tried with you. But now I get to decide how this ends. I respected that deeply. I gave her the documentation I had, the emails between them, the financial notes, everything. If we were burning this thing down, we were doing it together. A week later, Nate was served again, this time with a lawsuit from Kara's team. My lawyer made sure the timing lined up perfectly. His professional world collapsed in slow motion. One day, I saw his firm's name disappear from the glass office downtown. I asked a friend who worked in the same building what happened. She said they let him go quietly. No announcement, no farewell email, just a clean removal and someone new in his office the next morning. I didn't feel victorious. I felt justified. Like all the lies, all the manipulation, all the quiet cruelty finally had weight. It wasn't petty. It was overdue. Then the kids' school called again, this time about a different issue. Someone again, Nate had tried to change emergency contact information, tried to list Kara's name instead of mine. I didn't even bother confronting him. I took the paperwork, scheduled a meeting with the principal, and handed them a packet with all our legal updates. Sole custody was pending, visitation rights under review. They understood immediately. I walked out of that meeting lighter, not because I had won, but because I had stopped waiting for permission to act. That weekend, Mia came into my room while I was folding laundry. She didn't ask about her dad. She just said, "Are we going to be okay?" And I told her the truth. We already are. I didn't want her to think okay meant perfect. I wanted her to see that okay was surviving without breaking, growing without needing someone else to shrink. A few days later, I heard from Eleanor. A handwritten letter, 3 pages, in perfect cursive, soaked in perfume, that reminded me of stale regret. She said she was disappointed in me, that I had taken things too far, that she didn't recognize the woman I had become. I read it twice, then shredded it, because the truth is, she never recognized me. She recognized the version of me who kept quiet, who cooked dinner and let her son walk over her while smiling through the salt. That woman was gone, and I wasn't sorry, not even a little. Nate tried again, one last attempt to regain control. He showed up at the house unannounced, holding a grocery bag, acting like this was still his kitchen. I didn't panic. I didn't argue. I stepped outside, called my lawyer, then the police. Calmly, directly. They escorted him off the property. The next day, we filed a restraining order, not because I felt unsafe, but because he needed to understand his presence was no longer welcome and his control was permanently revoked. After that, things finally started to settle. Court was approaching, and I had everything lined up. My lawyer was confident. "He's going to try to spin it," she warned. But the evidence speaks for itself. Judges don't like liars. And they hate manipulators. The kids weren't asking about their dad much anymore. Mia had stopped trying to defend him. Jay barely mentioned him unless he had to. I could see the hurt behind their silence, but I also saw strength. They were watching, and healing in their own way. I tried to keep our life as steady as possible. Same bedtime routines, same Saturday morning pancakes, same music in the kitchen while we cleaned, because consistency was the one thing I could still give them. And myself. One afternoon, I got a call from Kara. Her case was moving forward. She was doing okay, scared, exhausted, but standing tall. "Thank you," she said, voice soft, "for helping me, for not blaming me." I told her the truth. You were never the problem. He was the lie. We weren't friends in the traditional sense, but there was an unspoken bond, A mutual understanding between two women who had survived the same storm from different directions. That night, I sat outside on the porch with a glass of wine. It was quiet, peaceful. The kind of silence that used to feel like loneliness but now felt like freedom. I looked around the yard, the same one I'd mowed, planted, tended to for years. It still belonged to me, not because the court said so, but because I earned it. Every inch, every brick, every piece of peace. And as the sun dipped low and the lights flickered on inside the house, I realized something. This wasn't just survival. This was reclamation of space, of self, of the woman I used to be before she forgot how powerful she really was. Court day came with overcast skies and an odd calm that settled in my chest like a quiet knowing. I didn't feel fear. Not anymore. I'd already lived through the worst of it. Now it was just time to finish what he started. I wore navy. Clean lines, no drama. My lawyer said it made me look competent, steady, like someone who never needed to raise her voice to be taken seriously. Nate arrived in a gray suit, one of the more expensive ones I hadn't seen in months. He looked tired, thinner, like the weight of his own lies had finally started pressing down on him. He didn't look at me when he passed, just kept walking, flanked by his new lawyer, a younger man with too much gel in his hair and a nervous energy that gave him away. They tried to delay the hearing, said new evidence had surfaced, needed more time to review. The judge wasn't amused. "You've had ample time," she said flatly. "We're proceeding." And just like that, the room shifted. We laid everything out: financial records, emails, signed statements from former clients, screenshots, therapist notes. We didn't just tell a story. We mapped it with timestamps and bank codes and patterns that proved this wasn't a one-time slip. It was a lifestyle, a blueprint of deception. Nate's lawyer stammered through objections, tried to twist the narrative, suggested I had hacked into Nate's files, that my mental health history made me an unreliable narrator. My lawyer stayed calm. She slid over my therapist's letter. Notes documenting our sessions for the past year, each one dated, signed, and legally protected. My client did not break down, she said. She woke up. When it came time for custody, we didn't need dramatics, just truth. School reports, teacher statements, Mia's essay. That part still made my throat tighten. The judge read it aloud. Her voice softened when she reached the line that said, "My mom didn't scream or shatter. She stood." The courtroom was silent. Nate looked away. For the first time, I saw real shame on his face. But it was too late for redemption. His past had caught up, and it brought receipts. Kara's case had been added to the hearing as supplemental evidence. Her lawsuit opened the door to civil damages, which in turn exposed financial misconduct under Nate's legal license. The Bar Association rep sat in the back, taking notes. Every lie, every name drop, every transaction he thought he buried unearthed and displayed like rusted weapons. When court recessed for lunch, I stepped outside and found myself standing under a tree near the parking lot. I wasn't shaking, I wasn't pacing, I was steady. The kind of calm you earn after walking barefoot through fire and coming out with skin intact. My sister called during the break. She'd been following everything, checking updates like it was a courtroom drama. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Like a damn lighthouse," I said, lit up and not moving. She laughed, and it felt good to hear someone laugh with me again, not at me or around me like I didn't belong. After lunch, things moved quickly. The judge issued a provisional order granting me primary custody. Visitation would be reviewed quarterly. No overnights for now. The house? Mine. The accounts? Frozen until final division. The shell corporations Nate built to hide funds? Flagged. His legal license? Suspended pending investigation. The firm that dropped him weeks ago issued a formal statement of non-involvement. He stood there as the judge read the ruling, jaw clenched, shoulders back, trying to preserve the last fragments of dignity he hadn't sold for power. I didn't gloat. I didn't even look at him. My job wasn't to humiliate him. It was to rebuild what he tried to take from me, and I had done that, quietly, completely. The kids were waiting at home. My best friend had picked them up from school and kept them distracted. When I walked through the door, Mia ran up and hugged me without asking a single question. Jay offered to help with dinner, which in his language meant everything was okay. That night, I didn't talk about court. We watched a movie. I made garlic bread. We laughed. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was simply living. A few days later, I got a letter from Nate. Not handwritten, typed clean cold. He apologized, sort of. Blamed stress, blamed pressure. Said he didn't know how to be a husband once he started chasing success. Said he never hated me, just forgot how to see me. I read it once, didn't respond. What was there to say to someone who had always needed a mirror more than a partner? I filed it with the rest of the documents, not for sentiment, but for record keeping. Meanwhile, Kara's case continued to gain traction. A few more women came forward, not romantic partners, but clients who had experienced the same manipulation. I offered to testify if needed. She thanked me, but said her lawyer had everything under control. "You gave me the blueprint," she said. "I just needed to believe I could use it." In the weeks that followed, I started to feel myself return. Not the version of me who once smoothed over tension with baked goods and silence, but the one from years ago, the woman who used to write short stories, who stayed up late reading because she couldn't sleep unless her mind wandered first. I picked up a pen again, started journaling, not about him, about me, my life, my hopes, things I'd forgotten to ask myself. One entry started with the sentence, "Today, I didn't flinch when I saw my reflection." And that was enough. Small wins became big ones. I restructured our budget, set up accounts for the kids, updated wills, insurance, every little corner he used to control. The more I did, the more I realized how deep the rot had gone. But I also saw how much strength had grown in its place. One evening, Jay asked if we were going to move. I told him no. "We don't run from what's ours," I said. "We make it new." He nodded, like he understood more than he let on. Maybe he did. Kids always know more than we give them credit for. He helped me repaint the guest room the following weekend. The one Eleanor used to stay in. We picked a soft green. Mia added wall art. The room looked lighter, like the ghost had finally left. And me? I was still standing, not waiting for the next storm, just breathing in the quiet and learning to trust the stillness again. It's strange how silence sounds different once peace finds you. It used to feel like a warning, like waiting for the next shoe to drop. But now it hums softly like something earned. The house doesn't creak the same anymore. Maybe that's just me. Or maybe it's what happens when the weight of pretending lifts off the walls. Spring came faster than expected. One morning I woke up and the trees outside were dusted in green and gold. I opened the windows, let the breeze in. The scent of fresh earth mixed with the smell of coffee. Simple things started to matter again. Folding towels while music played, watching Mia braid her hair before school, listening to Jay hum while he watered the plants I used to forget. There's a rhythm to healing I hadn't understood before. It's not loud, it's not sudden, it's just one honest moment stitched to another, until you wake up and realize you're no longer in survival mode. You're home. The final hearing came and went with less noise than we expected. Nate didn't fight. Not anymore. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe the consequences had finally caught up and cornered the last arrogant part of him. The judge granted full custody. Visitation, supervised until further notice. The house, the retirement accounts, the seized offshore holdings all legally split but balanced in a way that protected the kids and punished the deception. My lawyer called it a win. I called it fair. Afterwards, Nate asked for a private meeting. In the hallway outside the courtroom, he looked smaller. Not just physically, but like a man who finally realized he'd been playing chess without knowing the rules. He apologized again, a little more real this time, said he didn't think it would end like this. I told him, that's the thing about betrayal. It always ends exactly the way you thought it wouldn't. He asked if we could start fresh someday for the kids. I told him we wouldn't be starting anything again. That bridge wasn't just burned. It had been detonated and buried. I wished him peace. That was all. Then I walked away. And this time, I didn't look back. A month passed before we heard from Eleanor. She sent birthday cards to the kids. No message inside. Just stiff handwriting that said their names and a gift card. They didn't react much. Mia rolled her eyes. Jay shrugged. I didn't tell them what to feel. I just let the silence speak for itself. We celebrated differently that year. No big parties. No loud announcements. Just pancakes and pajamas. Backyard music, Polaroids, and long hugs. We built new traditions without trying too hard. Sometimes when you stop forcing things, life arranges itself better than you ever could. Kara had her baby in early May. A girl. She named her Elise. Soft, bright eyes. She sent me a photo. No caption. Just the image. That was enough. It felt like a full circle closing quietly, the beginning of something better for both of us. We still talk occasionally. Not out of obligation, but out of shared survival. Two women who crossed paths in chaos and found clarity on the other side. She's stronger now. I can hear it in her voice. No more doubt. No more apologizing for someone else's damage. I think that's the kind of bond that never really fades. Summer rolled in with longer days and fewer shadows. The garden started blooming again. I hadn't touched it in years. Now Mia helps me plant basil. Jay's responsible for tomatoes. And somehow we turned a neglected corner of the yard into something alive. Growth is funny like that. You don't always see it happening, but one day it's everywhere. In the soil, in your spine, in your silence. I started writing again, not just journaling, but stories, fiction. Little scenes that turned into chapters. My sister read one and said, "This feels like you before you forgot how to want things." That stuck with me, so I kept writing. I even submitted a short story to a local publication. It got accepted. No fanfare, just a small printed copy that now sits on my desk beside a photo of me and the kids on the porch swing, barefoot, smiling like people who finally believe in quiet joy. People ask if I ever hear from Nate. Not much. He texts to schedule his supervised visits. The kids go sometimes, mostly out of curiosity or obligation. I don't know. But they always come home a little quieter, a little more sure of where they belong. I don't press. I let them figure out their own truths. They're smart. They see more than they say. I trust that. One night, a few weeks ago, Mia sat next to me after dinner. We were folding laundry. She asked if I was happy. Just like that. No lead in, no warning. I paused, thought about it, and told her yes. Not every second, but in the kind of way that stays, even on hard days. Especially then. Happiness isn't loud anymore. It's not fireworks or grand gestures. It's the sound of the door locking behind you and knowing you're safe. It's falling asleep without rehearsing arguments in your head. It's letting yourself breathe without bracing for the next apology that never comes. I told her that, and she nodded like she already understood, because she probably did. Kids learn by watching, not by being told. And she'd seen me walk through fire without setting anyone else ablaze. That was the legacy I wanted to leave. Not perfection, not a clean slate. Just proof that you can choose yourself without shame, that you can love your life even after it cracks in half. The last day of school came, and we celebrated with ice cream in the driveway. Jay put whipped cream on everything. Mia played old throwback songs I hadn't heard in a decade. I closed my eyes and let it all wash over me, the heat, the music, the joy that didn't have to be chased anymore. Just lived. And as the sky shifted from gold to deep blue, I realized this wasn't a new chapter, it was a whole new book. One I was writing on my own, in my own voice, without waiting for anyone else to approve the plot. Nate once thought he was delivering the final blow, that I would crumble, that I'd vanish quietly while he built a new life on the ruins of mine. But what he didn't understand was that I was never made of glass. I was made of stone and fire, and the kind of resilience you don't see until it's the only thing holding you upright. So now, every Wednesday, I still make chicken and garlic bread. Mia sets the table. Jay dances in the kitchen. And I sit at the head of the table not because I demanded it, but because I stayed. Because I rebuilt. Because I refused to disappear. And that, more than anything, is my victory. Quiet. Final. Whole. Story 2. Rebecca is my name. I live and work in Chicago, and I'm 31 years old. A journey I believed would be full of affection turned out to be the cause I would never be able to view my family the same way again. The streetlights seemed to be dim, twinkling specks in the wind on a winter Saturday morning due to the heavy snowfall. At 6 a.m., I departed. My family was hosting an engagement party for my sister, Caroline, in a small Vermont hamlet after more than 8 hours of driving on treacherous roads. There was a neatly wrapped wedding cake box in the passenger seat, hidden away like a delicious secret. It was a 2-tiered red velvet cake with sugar flowers and cream cheese icing. It was previously described by Caroline as my high school fantasy. Almost 2 weeks prior, I had placed an order for the cake from a well-known bakery, paying extra to have it created fresh that morning. I traded comfort for my sister's grin because I loved her, not because I had time to spare. I changed into heels in a toilet at a gas station while wearing a tight black dress and a beige coat. In the process, I'm doing this for Caroline because she's worth it, I reminded myself each time I glanced in the mirror. I was almost out of breath as my car pulled into the driveway of the estate where the party was being held. With bright golden lights around the trees, the mansion shone in the snowy woodland like a scene from a fairy tale. White and silver ribbons waved softly in the breeze. "Caroline won't forget me after this," I recall whispering. Like a frail little prayer, the words reverberated throughout the vehicle. I gave the valet the keys. When he saw me come out with the cake box, he arched an eyebrow. "Do you handle the catering for the wedding?" he inquired, kind but aloof. I thought he was kidding and grinned with relief. "No, I'm the sister of the bride." He gave a nod, said nothing else. I entered the foyer and heard gentle violin music mingled with the aroma of vanilla candles. Oddly enough, though, nobody showed up to welcome me. Not a hug? No. How did the drive go? There were just a few visitors, who gave me a cursory glance before turning away as if I were an outsider who had entered the wrong home. Grasping the cake box firmly, I proceeded into the main hall, where Caroline was standing next to her fiancé, Ethan, who was dressed in ivory satin, a face that is constantly hailed as the family pearl is framed by soft locks. Before she noticed me, she was having a great time laughing with her companions. In a moment, Caroline's smile was gone. "You came, really?" Her eyes narrowed as if she were incredulous as she asked. 8 hours in the deep snow. I came, of course. Unexpected, the first tried to speak in a light-hearted manner. The cake box was not taken by Caroline, nor did she take a step toward him. "I didn't think you'd come with the weather and all," she added. I set the box next to a platter of macarons. I'm still trying to smile. Well, one of the bridesmaids said loudly enough, "It's your special day behind her. I take it she's not on the guest list?" Every phrase was heard by me. My heart broke. Caroline gave her a quick look but remained silent, then turned away. She leaned in Ethan's direction and left down the corridor a few seconds later. There, amid the strangers, I stood in my wet cloak. People walked by me as if I were an odd ornament. I recognized then that I wasn't a surprise visitor. I was a name that had been crossed out for a very long time. I made the decision to locate my mom. If anyone could figure out why I came, I still wanted to think it was her if anyone saw the work I'd put in. Wearing a crimson velvet dress and a silk scarf around her neck, she stood next to the fireplace, clutching a glass of white wine as if she were a speaker about to take the stage. She put down the drink, glanced over her shoulder, and avoided eye contact as I walked up. "Rebecca." She spoke quietly, as though she was worried someone would overhear. "I didn't expect you would show up." "Why not?" I tried to sound calm as I asked. "A week ago, I sent a message." I thought she would cut me off immediately and aggressively, but no one responded. "Let's avoid complicating things. Caroline's day is today. Don't let it become anything else." I clutched the strap of my handbag. "What are you saying?" She let out a sigh, turned to face me, and smiled slightly and courteously. "You get a lot of attention after all. Allow the proceedings to proceed in silence. Avoid taking center stage." I grinned, but it was a sad smile. I just made the nearly 9-hour drive through the snow to deliver Caroline's favorite cake. That may signify anything, I thought. With eyes as frigid as the winter wind, my mother murmured, "Rebecca, timing is everything when it comes to compassion." I paced the hall, her words echoing in my mind. Jazz was playing softly in the background. Like the wind, people drifted by me. Nobody inquired about my needs. Nobody inquired about my coldness. A collection of carefully selected frames of Caroline and Ethan's photos stood in the middle of the room, strolling in Central Park together. Caroline, wearing a white sweater, is clutching flowers. By the river, Ethan made a proposal while grinning. Everything is flawless and completely unrelated to me. Not a single image. I walked to the reception table to look at the seating plan and guest list. Every printed surname on ivory paper was digitized by me. Caroline, a lady our grandmother met twice at a charity dinner, had old college pals. Not me, though. I glanced at a staff worker. She gave a soft grin. "Please pardon me. Am I able to assist you? I gestured toward the seating chart. The bride's sister is me. My name is not visible. She carefully went over the list. Rebecca Collins? Indeed. She nibbled on her lip. I apologize. You could be an unannounced visitor. No, I'm related. She gave a little nod and took a step back. Around me, I stood, paralyzed within. Happy greetings echoed as if no one had heard. I was falling apart. I discovered a vacant chair next to the dessert table. However, another employee came over before I could take a seat. Apologies. Gently but forcefully, he said. The DJ's helper is seated there. I squeezed my lips and nodded. I get it. I then made my way to the room's darkest corner, where the laughter subsided and the lights dimmed. I poured a glass of water for myself and held it chilly in both hands. Could fill the void in my chest with water. I was able to view the slideshow on a huge screen from there. Images from Caroline's early years to the present. She won the high school dance prize, and she had ribbons in her hair, completing college, passing through Italy. Every moment was picked with care, and me. In all of them, her sister was absent. As if I had never been in her life, I felt a chill come over me. It was the recognition of what I used to call family, not the snow outside. I entered the coat room to breathe, not to remove my coat. The only place I could hide from the onslaught of far-off looks outside was a small room with dim yellow illumination and packed hangers. There was a tray of bridesmaid presents on a little side table. 10 little boxes, each with a pink ribbon wrapped around them. I looked at the names Claire, Erica, Hannah, and Julia. Mine was absent. Not an error. They insured it. I reached for my phone out of habit and slid onto a velvet chair nearby. The screen sprang to life. No new messages, no missed calls. Comfortably, the first opened my message app and scrolled. I became aware of it at that point. A fresh group chat. Caroline's ideal squad. I scowled. I don't recall signing up for this. Perhaps I was accidentally inserted. Julia's most recent message was sent 3 hours ago. The bridesmaid among others. Everything is lovely and flawless. Just how we had intended. There were older writings above it. Claire, there's no way she's coming. She despises crowds. Hannah, better still, the atmosphere will be more relaxed. Then I noticed it. That one broke me. Caroline, she doesn't match the stereotype. To put it simply, the list is full. It would be awkward to have her in the wedding pictures. There was a shaking head gif and a cringing emoji below. How long I stared is a mystery to me. It seemed as though each word was engraved directly into my chest. Caroline didn't simply ignore me. She intended to exclude me. The worst part is that I had no suspicions at all. With shaking hands, I slipped my phone back into my purse and exited the group chat. It's not cold. No more. I exited the coat closet. No specific destination in mind. Just trying to find a way out of those walls that were closing in. I stumbled into a small corridor that connected the staff area and kitchen. There were trays of unopened food waiting to be brought out under the soft yellow ceiling lights. I heard laughter coming from behind a cracked door just as I was about to turn around. I froze when I heard a voice I recognized. Caroline was the one. The fact that she drove all the way here still amazes me. Who does that? Then the voice of Hannah. What would you bring on a whole road trip? A homemade cake that appears to have been purchased at a bargain store. There was a chuckle. I went cold. I held my breath. Caroline went on, her tone softer but no less abrasive. Everything would have been ideal if she hadn't arrived. I was hoping the weather would keep her away. Claire added her voice. Maybe she would have spun out on the road or something. That way we'd have an excuse to be sad and still enjoy the peace. This time it wasn't just a laugh. It was an eruption of laughter, light, ruthless, and all too familiar. The kind of laughter I'd heard my entire childhood. Only back then. I didn't know who it was aimed at. Now I did. I stepped back, my hand reaching for the wall to steady myself. The floor felt like it tilted, not because I lost my balance, but because the whole world had just collapsed. None of them thought I could hear. And that's what hurt the most. Because what people say behind your back, that's what they really mean. And the truth was, I had never been wanted here. I turned away. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time, I knew this much I wasn't mistaken. I wouldn't excuse them anymore. Through blind hope, I had heard everything. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I wanted to forgive and return to the main hall. There was no reason to stay in a place where even breathing made my chest ache. Instead, I quietly stepped out through the side door near the kitchen, my long coat still streaked with old snow from that morning's drive. The cold wind whipped against my face, like it was trying to wash away every illusion I had brought with me. But the coldest thing wasn't the weather. It was the silence from the people I once called family. I sat in my car for a long time. The engine was off, but my thoughts continued racing. My phone brightened up with a fresh message. It was from my mother. Just one line. Rebecca, don't create a scene. I gazed at the writing. Mind blank above it. My prior message still sat. Mom, I'm on my way. Hope you'll all be surprised. Marked as read. No reply. I didn't answer. I had no energy left to explain or defend something that never should have needed explanation. I just wanted to be there for my sister. I sat in that darkness until the golden lights from the estate across the road disappeared into nightfall. I didn't drive home that night. I booked a room at a cheap motel 30 minutes away. My dress was wrinkled, makeup smeared. After repeated tries not to weep, I didn't switch on the television. Social media wasn't something I checked. One breath at a time, I let the memories of the evening eat away at me as I lay there gazing at the stained ceiling. My phone was ringing when I woke up the next morning. The lack of sleep was still making my mind spin. Caroline's heavily tinted photo was the first thing I saw when I opened Instagram. With her satin dress and sparkling lights behind her, Caroline is accompanied by her bridesmaids and holds a champagne glass, similar to the wedding invitations from fairy tales. A perfect night with all the people I love most was the caption. I wasn't in the shot. No tag, no mention, no thank you. Not a single trace that I had ever been there. I scrolled through the comments. Caroline, the most lovely bride. Everything looks wonderful. Wish I'd been invited. No one asked about me. No one questioned about the wedding cake. About the individual who drove over 400 miles to show up, then fled without a trace. The following communication came from my cousin Julia. I hope you realize that last night wasn't easy, Rebecca. Asking for attention was not appropriate at that party. Then, in the family group chat, my mother sent me another SMS family unit. Collins, she's going through a difficult time. Let's wait. Avoid stoking the flames. I read it again, as though it took many readings for my brain to completely comprehend a difficult passage. The tale was being rewritten. Rebecca in a different form. Deranged. Disturbing. It's embarrassing. What I had heard behind that kitchen door went unspoken. Nobody questioned me about my silent departure. Nobody inquired about my well-being. An old friend's note, a person I hadn't spoken to in over 3 years, arrived for the engagement celebration, became uncomfortable. Caroline claimed that after making a disturbance, you vanished. Are you all okay? I realized I hadn't just been removed from the guest list, so I didn't respond. Like I had never been the major character in anyone's recollection, only an extra readily excised to maintain the ideal image, I had been removed from the story as if my existence had been a glitch that needed to be fixed. My laptop opened, and I made a new folder called The Truth in It. I took pictures of yesterday's snow-covered driveway, the wedding cake receipt, and the unopened cake box on the kitchen counter. Although I wasn't really sure why, I took screenshots of Caroline and her friends' group chat. However, if someone ever inquires, was it truly so awful? Yes, is what I want to be able to say. They will never tell you these things. I may get kicked out of the party. I may be cropped out of the pictures. However, I refuse to allow them to continue using quiet to define me. I stayed in my tiny apartment in Chicago all afternoon on Sunday. I spread out everything that people had decided to overlook on the kitchen table in the soft light from the window. The screen of my laptop was open, revealing the truth folder, where I had stored the facts that no one wanted to admit. I took a picture of the red velvet wedding cake that was still sealed in its silver box. I never read the receipt for the more than $200. I paid the bakery in advance to have it made fresh that morning. I snapped a photo in front of Caroline's mansion, still holding onto the cake like it was a priceless present, my coat soaking through and my hair disheveled from the snowstorm. When I initially opened Instagram, I uploaded a picture of the cake outside with snow all around it, and the gold ribbon contrasted with the white. Not everything we bring is appreciated, the caption said. That does not imply that it is worthless. The screenshot of the receipt from the email confirmation was the second post. The card states that Caroline Collins would get a 2-tiered red velvet wedding cake on Saturday morning. The third was a picture of my car's snow-covered windshield taken from inside. I arrived, despite everything outside trying to stop me, which was as white as the sky itself. I disabled the comments because I didn't need permission to share my experience, not because I was afraid of controversy. After that, I checked my email. Caroline Collins, Aunt Martha, and recipient's mother Linda Collins. Talk about the wedding cake, I didn't say much. The receipt for the wedding cake I ordered, paid for, and delivered on Saturday is attached. No one ever discussed or opened the cake. I don't require gratitude. All I want is for you to realize the reality. I pushed submit after attaching the 3 pictures. In less than 5 minutes, Mom responded. This isn't helping, Rebecca. You are exacerbating the situation. I didn't answer. I opened a fresh message, this time to Ethan, Caroline's fiancé, who worked in the PR division of Lockridge Financial. I knew one thing, but I wasn't sure if they would care. This company took reputation very seriously and avoided any personal controversies that may undermine investor trust. Not much was written by me. I just sent 2 files, including a snapshot of the Collins family group chat, in which my mother referred to me as unstable, and Caroline made fun of me for making things into a tragedy. An audio clip from that evening, in which Caroline and her companions chuckled at the possibility of my being involved in an accident while traveling. The voices had a distinct theme and were strong and clear. Information that might be important to the business. Picture. No caption. No justification. I let them make the decision. Upon finishing, I shut down my laptop and fetched myself a drink of water, my hands still shaking, not because I was afraid of their reaction, but because it was my first time. I resisted. No shouting, no begging to be allowed in. Simply exposing the facts to see whether they would continue to act as though they were unaware. After several hours, my phone began to vibrate. A call from an unidentified number. This is Lindsay from Lockridge PR, Rebecca. I appreciate you providing the information. We are examining the material and will act in accordance with corporate guidelines. The fact that they answered in a way that my own family hadn't told me was enough to let me know what was going to happen next. They were unable to bury it this time. Caroline shared a little video clip of flickering candles with lettering across the screen on her Instagram account that evening. Someone will always find it unbearable to witness your happiness. No tags, no name. However, everyone was aware of the subject. I simply closed my phone and grinned. Since they had written the play this time and I had merely pushed back the curtain to let the audience view backstage, I didn't need to respond verbally. Monica, an old childhood friend who lived close to Caroline, texted me on Wednesday morning as I was brewing coffee. Have you listened to the family get-together? The dinner was canceled. Ethan stated that he must reconsider everything. In the kitchen, I remained still. The tremble in my wrist was too strong for the coffee scent to mask. I was not happy. I was not offended. I simply had the impression that the correct door had finally been knocked on by the truth. Everything went according to plan for the weekend brunch at Aunt Martha's place. A small meeting to settle the dispute. Just as Mom said, reluctantly I accepted the invitation. Similar to a side dish. Only because it was already on the hotel's menu did people serve. My tardiness was 10 minutes. I would remain silent not because of traffic, but because I wanted to see everyone's faces as soon as I entered to see who was praying and who was waiting for me to speak. Wearing a cream knit dress and little makeup, Caroline sat in the middle of the long table, but it was hard to conceal the weariness beneath her mascara. There was no Ethan. Martha breathed a sigh of relief as Mom smiled stiffly. I took my designated seat at the far end of the table, next to a vase of white tulips, and nodded solemnly. As usual, Caroline was the first to speak, her voice soft and somewhat reflective. It has been an emotional trip over the last week. I believe we've all witnessed the true power of family. All around the table, heads nodded. Everyone understood who she was referring to. After putting down my water glass and using a napkin to clean the rim, I looked up. I hesitated, but I wanted to say a few things to Caroline. It's not just 1 minute today, Rebecca. Calm but forceful, I said. I pulled out my phone and pressed play on the stored audio clip. Caroline's smooth yet icy voice echoed. She doesn't match the stereotype. To put it simply, the list is full. It would be difficult to have her in the wedding pictures. Then there was laughter, and then Julia's voice. On the road, she may spin out. In this manner, we would both have a cause for sadness and peace. Although the room was filled, there was no sound at all. Through the little speaker, just their own words were audible. Every sentence functions as a verdict. Caroline's face became white. My mother lost her temper and put down her glass. Aunt Martha put her hand over her lips. No more nods. After 10 seconds, I ended the recording. Enough. I heard that at Caroline's engagement celebration, my voice was strangely steady as I spoke. I mistakenly believed that I had brought a gift of affection, but I was really a hindrance to concealment. Caroline got to her feet. Rebecca, it was a joke. Was one interrupting a thought or a strategy all along? Nobody responded. I glanced at my mom first, then at Aunt Martha. Would any of you trust me if I didn't have that recording? My mom remained silent. Her gaze wandered. Is Ethan aware? A relative inquired, seeming uncomfortable. Caroline took a gulp. He needs time to reflect. I gave a nod. Excellent. He ought to be aware of his future spouse. I didn't hold off till I heard back. The faces that had previously turned away at the party were now observing me as if they were seeing me for the first time as I stood and carefully pulled the chair back in place. Aunt Martha trailed behind me as I left. She said, "Are you not just standing up for yourself?" As she caressed my arm, "This family was reminded by you that the truth is still worthy of being heard." I simply nodded before stepping out into the brilliant morning light. The sky above was so blue it nearly ached to look at as the clouds parted. In years, for the first time. This time they had said it all, so I didn't feel the need to elaborate. It had been a week since that brunch, and my phone was still dead. No check-ins, no apologies, just a few silent comments from individuals who, like me, had previously been shunned by their families, and a few Instagram alerts from old acquaintances who liked the photo of the wedding cake I had delivered through the snowstorm. I made no attempt to contact Caroline. I had lost my anger. I simply felt as though a lengthy chapter had ended without a terrible conclusion. Resolution is not required, just finished. My phone rang on Friday night as I was folding clothes. A name that was recognized appeared on the screen. Caroline. The first paused. My hand briefly touched the decline button before coming to a standstill. At last, I placed the phone on the table, pressed the accept button, and switched it to speaker mode. Rebecca. She spoke in a raspy voice. Please, just for once, I didn't say anything, even though I know you probably don't want to hear it. I was mistaken. With every syllable sounding like it was struggling through ice water, Caroline went on. People have likened me to you my entire life. You were intelligent, self-sufficient, and never needed help, and I constantly had to put in more effort simply to get noticed. I reclined in my chair and gazed at the ceiling. I never imagined Caroline would tell me this. I felt envious of you. She openly acknowledged that she had attended my own engagement party. I was afraid. I'm afraid of the way Ethan regarded you when you entered. Fearful of being complimented for navigating a snowstorm? I'm afraid I'll be the shadow again. I shut my eyes. The pain came back. I once wished I had heard them sooner, not because of what she said. But, Caroline replied, her voice shaking, that doesn't excuse what I did. It was cowardly and self-centered. I created you the problem by excluding you from the guest list, laughing behind your back, and then fabricating a tale. I am aware that cannot be undone. I answered after letting out a deep breath. You're correct. It cannot be reversed. I don't want to live with those scars forever, though. A pause occurred. Then, just above a whisper, Caroline inquired, Will you pardon me? I considered it. It wasn't necessary to start again in order to forgive. It didn't entail going back to the same place. Caroline, I don't hate you. I can't go back to the way things were, I stated honestly. For both parties to evolve, some partnerships must terminate. Caroline remained silent. We simply sat there, each of us breathing on the other side of a shattered bridge. Then she bid farewell, nor dramatic, nor crying. Just a timely and satisfactory conclusion. The next day, I visited the neighborhood bakery where I had placed my order for the red velvet cake. When I walked in, the store owner recognized me and grinned. This time, what will it be? She inquired. I gave a soft grin. Only a little cake. Icing that is vanilla. Straightforward design. Not a message. Simply kind and truthful. I set the cake in the middle of my kitchen table that night and lighted a tiny candle, not on her birthday, for an anniversary, no, or just to commemorate a time when I put myself before attempting to win over others. I sliced a piece of cake, poured a cup of hot tea, and sat by the window with my hand in my hand while I watched the gentle snow fall outside. Was there a draft on my phone already? I was finally prepared to publish the last message to anybody who has ever felt like the extra in their own family's narrative after making innumerable modifications. You're not incorrect. You're not overly delicate. You're only being honest. And I've never had to apologize for that. I once went through a snowstorm to give it my all, but I came away empty-handed. But now that I understand that family isn't formed by blood, I'm not regretful. Mutual choice is the foundation of it. And I've chosen myself at last. I clicked post. Just relief, no dread, no waiting. Like dropping a burden I'd been carrying for too long. I got out of bed earlier than normal the following morning. Not because I'm nervous, not because of residual melancholy. Simply because there was nothing left to conceal. I was surprised by how softly the winter light crept through the drapes. Still holding to the street, I stood at the kitchen window, making coffee, and gazed out at the thin layer of ice. Not much of what Caroline had said the previous evening was on my mind. I no longer had to carry it about like a wound in my mind. Not because I forgot. In years, for the first time, I had the impression that my thinking could expand. Melissa, a former coworker, sent me a message a few hours later. Your post was read by me. My cousin and I experienced a similar situation. I appreciate you stating what I was unable to. Then another from a college acquaintance. You're not by yourself. It's not always safer to be with family. Messages from folks who had previously been silent when I needed to be seen flooded my email throughout the morning. Right now. In some way, my voice had made others feel heard when I stopped waiting for acceptance. It was not what I had anticipated, that so many people could hear my tale, which at one point seemed insignificant and out of place. And I came to see that tranquility isn't always achieved by quiet. It's silent. Erasure. Mom's and Caroline's quiet. From others who turned away when they noticed me sitting alone myself at that gathering. It wasn't because they were unaware of what was going on. It was as a result of their decision to ignore me, since I caused them discomfort because I didn't match the story they were trying to tell. I had also been quiet for too long. I feared that if I raised my voice, I would be perceived as the one who caused difficulty, the overly sentimental daughter, and the one who spoiled the atmosphere. In actuality, though, so-called serenity was never intended for me. As soon as I finished speaking, I pushed post, listened to the audio, and sent the email. I stopped being the victim in other people's stories at that point. It was me that wrote it over. Being honest does not make you a horrible person. It releases you. Not everybody will comprehend. Not everybody will cheer. I was secretly unfollowed by certain family members. Didn't send a message. Didn't give a call. I didn't need them to, though, for the first time in my life. I knew I wasn't incorrect and didn't need anyone to tell me so. I went to the bakery that afternoon to express my gratitude to the proprietor for her unobtrusive compassion, rather than to purchase another cake. She didn't ask questions and just smiled when my own family couldn't. Mentioned just when you entered. Cake wasn't simply for celebration, I suspected. I gave a nod. On the walk home, it was the final present I gave to a door that had already closed. The snow began to fall softly and gently. Not severe, not resentful. It was as gentle as if it were covering everything with a new coat of pure white. I thought, not every storm comes to destroy, as I paused in the middle of the road and tipped my face toward the sky. To clean the skies is the sole reason some come, and me. I had experienced such a storm. I took out the old journal I had put away when I was 26 that evening. I went back to the first page I had written on. They might let me remain if I'm kind enough. With a smile, I used a blue ink pen to carefully cross out that line and then scribbled a new one directly beneath it. Nobody has the authority to exclude or keep someone if that individual has made the decision to live in their own truth. I put the diary away, switched out the lights, and left a tiny candle glowing softly in the kitchen corner. And I slept soundly for the first time in a long time. No voices ringing in my head, no jolts of awakening, no nightmares, just peace. Not from forgetting, but from letting go and confronting everything at last. There is more to Rebecca's tale than just leaving a party. It's about coming back to oneself after constantly trying to fit in with a family that never really paid attention. She mustered the strength to speak out, confront the hurt, and let go of preconceived notions. Rebecca demonstrates that the truth should always be stated, even if it is difficult to hear. And sometimes the best thing we can do to find peace is not to forgive, but to stop needing someone. What are your thoughts on Rebecca's decision? If you were excluded by your own family, would you dare to speak up? For more moving tales about life and family, leave a comment below and remember to subscribe to the channel.